Linda Hogan shocking reaction to Hulk Hogan death news. I was blindsided. Linda Hogan breaks her silence in a shocking reaction to the false death news about Hulk Hogan. This video will leave you speechless. In this explosive expose, we dive into Linda Hogan's emotional and candid response to the viral rumors surrounding WWE legend Hulk Hogan's alleged death. From the origins of the hoax to how Linda found out, and what she really thinks about it, you'll get an unfiltered look into one of wrestling's most talked about moments in recent memory. What if everything you heard about Hulk Hogan's death wasn't true? What if, in a world addicted to headlines, one of wrestling's most iconic legacies was nearly erased by a lie? This isn't a tribute. This isn't a memorial. This is the story of a woman blindsided by the most chilling rumor imaginable. A rumor that spread like wildfire, igniting shockwaves through the wrestling world and reaching the ears of someone who once knew the man behind the legend better than anyone else. Her name is Linda Hogan. And her reaction to the viral death hoax that claimed Hulk Hogan's life? It might just change the way you look at internet fame, legacy, and the weight of unresolved love. It began like so many digital deceptions do, a single tweet, vague and unsigned, posted in the dead of night. R.I.P. Hulk Hogan. 1953 to 2025. A legend has fallen. There was no source. No confirmation. But the words, stark and final, were enough to trigger chaos. Within minutes, wrestling fans across the globe began flooding timelines, forums, and group chats with disbelief. Was it true? Had they really lost Hulk Hogan, the immortal, the red and yellow phenomenon, the larger-than-life symbol of 80s wrestling glory? Social media platforms erupted in confusion and grief, echoing the panic of an era where news doesn't have to be true to be viral. The hoax was cruel in its precision. It mimicked the template of authentic tributes, black and white photos, teary-eyed emojis, fans sharing childhood memories of watching Hogan slam giants and tear his shirt in wild fury. For many, the emotional muscle memory kicked in long before skepticism. They cried. They mourned. Some even posted videos of themselves in Hogan shirts, paying tribute to a man who, it turned out, wasn't even gone, but far beyond the tweets and hashtags. In a quiet home far removed from the bright lights of the WWE universe, Linda Hogan was jolted awake by the sound of her phone buzzing over and over again. Missed calls. Texts. News alerts. Something had happened. Her heart raced. And then she saw it. I'm so sorry to hear about Terry. Another message, Linda, is it true? Her stomach dropped. In that moment, the past collided with the present. Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan to the world, wasn't just a wrestling icon. He was her ex-husband, her co-star on reality TV, the father of her children, and once, the love of her life. Their relationship had been stormy, their breakup public and messy, but nothing could have prepared her for what those messages implied. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She froze. Her thoughts raced, grasping at logic, at memory. The last time she'd spoken to him, he was fine. They didn't speak often, but they shared a strange kind of tether, one that's hard to break when you've built an empire together, when your family, for better or worse, has played out in front of millions. Linda didn't want to believe it, but the weight of what she was reading made it impossible to ignore. She refreshed Google. Searched his name. Hulk Hogan dead came up over and over again. There were no official reports. No statements from WWE. No word from his children. But the digital machine was already in motion. Fan pages were in mourning. YouTubers had uploaded eulogies. Twitter tributes were in the tens of thousands. And Linda, alone in her home, was trying to process the impossible. What if it was true? She didn't call Terry. Not at first. A part of her was terrified of confirming what she didn't want to know. Another part of her was angry, furious that she was finding out like this, like a stranger scrolling headlines. In that moment, she was no longer the ex-wife of a superstar. She was a human being staring into the abyss of potential loss, swept away by a rumor with no source, no soul, and no warning. An hour later, she picked up the phone. She dialed his number with trembling hands, expecting the worst, an automated message, a disconnected tone. It rang once. Twice. And then, his voice, "Terry here." Her knees buckled, she didn't say anything for a moment. Just breathed. "Hello?" he asked again, confused. Linda exhaled. "You're alive." There was a pause. Then the familiar rasp of his voice, "What are you talking about?" It was the moment disbelief gave way to rage. Linda's voice cracked, not with grief, but with a wave of emotion she hadn't felt in years. Relief. Anger. Sadness. Confusion. She told him what was happening. The tweets. The videos. The headlines. The fake tributes. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. Terry chuckled, the way only someone raised on Kafabi could. "Brother, they've tried to bury me before." But Linda didn't laugh. Because this wasn't a wrestling storyline. This was real life. And it had hit her like a truck. In the hours that followed, the truth began to surface. The death news was fake. A hoax, crafted for clicks, for chaos, for shock value. WWE issued no statements because there was no statement to make. Hulk Hogan was alive. But the internet had already performed the funeral, and Linda? She was left to clean up the emotional wreckage. She issued a short statement of her own, not through agents or publicists, but through her personal social media. Four simple words: "I was blindsided. This hurt." The post went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. Fans responded with sympathy, shock, and anger of their own. The cruelty of the hoax wasn't just about Hogan, it was about the people who loved him, past and present. It was about family members getting texts from strangers before getting confirmation from loved ones. It was about ex-wives crying alone in their kitchens, unsure if they were grieving a rumor or a reality. In an exclusive interview days later, Linda opened up about the emotional roller coaster the hoax had triggered. "I've seen a lot in my life," she began, her voice steady but raw. "Terry and we've been through hell and back. But nothing prepares you for the moment you think someone you shared decades with is gone. And to find out it's all fake? I can't even explain what that does to your heart." She paused. "It's not just about me. It's about our kids. My phone was blowing up before they even woke up. Imagine them seeing RIP Hulk Hogan trending before hearing from their dad. That's trauma. That's not a joke." Linda didn't hold back. She spoke about the legacy of wrestling, the blurred lines between entertainment and reality, and how deeply damaging these viral stunts can be. "People forget that we're human," she said. "Terry might be Hulk Hogan to the world, but to us, he's Dad. He's the guy who barbecues in the backyard. He's the man who cries at old movies when no one's looking. Seeing the world mourn him while he's alive? That does something to you. It's haunting." She admitted that for a brief moment, she imagined a world without him. And despite everything, despite the divorce, the public spats, the heartbreak, she hated it. You don't spend decades of your life with someone and not feel something when you think they're gone. No matter what's happened between us, I still care. I always will. That honesty struck a chord. Fans who had once watched Hogan Knows Best suddenly saw the family behind the fame with new eyes. The scripted chaos of reality TV had never shown this side, raw, vulnerable, broken. Linda Hogan, so often cast as the fiery counterpart to Hogan's bombastic persona, was now just a woman reeling from a lie that nearly became her truth. And Hulk? True to form, he shrugged it off publicly. "Brother, if I had $1 for every time they tried to kill me off, I'd be richer than Vince." But behind the scenes, even he was shaken. The hoax had cut close to home. Friends called in a panic. Business partners paused projects. Even WWE superstars reached out, unsure what was real. For a brief moment, Hulk Hogan got to witness his own funeral. And it wasn't an ego boost. It was a gut punch. Linda later reflected on what the whole ordeal revealed, not just about the internet, but about her own heart. I thought I was done with that part of my life, she said. But when I saw those messages, when I thought he was gone, it was like I was 25 again, standing at the altar, hoping this crazy wrestling ride would never end. She stopped, wiping a tear. You think you're ready for anything. But no one's ready for that. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this hoax, cruel as it was, reminded everyone that behind the spandex and storylines are real people, flawed, complex, and deeply connected in ways the world can't always see. For Linda Hogan, the rumor was a wake-up call. Not just about mortality, but about memory. About love that never fully dies, even when marriages do. And as she ended the interview, one final thought hung in the air like a silent bell. They tried to erase him, but in doing so, they reminded us all why he mattered. The aftermath of the hoax didn't fade quickly. For days, the name Hulk Hogan remained at the top of trending lists across social platforms, not because of a milestone, not for a match replay or a Hall of Fame clip, but because of death. A false death. And in its wake, Linda Hogan found herself unexpectedly pulled back into the spotlight, not as a reality TV personality, not as a tabloid headline, but as a woman forced to confront a legacy she thought she had left behind. I buried family before, she said in a quieter moment during the interview. I know what real loss feels like. And that's what made this so cruel. The feeling was real. The grief was real. Even if the news wasn't. What struck Linda most was how easily people accepted the hoax. The absence of a credible source didn't matter. In fact, the virality of the rumor seemed to lend it legitimacy. That's the scariest part, she said. People don't wait for confirmation anymore. They just react. And once that machine gets going, there's no pulling it back. She described watching tribute videos pop up online, edited with melancholic music and grainy footage of Hogan's matches, as if the world had already moved on without checking if it needed to. They were already mourning him, while he was alive. She paused, her voice breaking. I was mourning him too. For Linda, the experience stirred memories that had long been packed away. The good, the bad, the complicated. She remembered their early days, back when he was just Terry, a rising star with a booming voice and endless ambition. She remembered the nights they'd stay up late planning their future, how they'd dream about building an empire. And then she remembered the empire collapsing, infidelity, public scrutiny, divorce. But even through all that pain, one truth remained: Hulk Hogan was family, and family doesn't disappear with a lie. That's what made the false death hit harder than anyone expected. It wasn't just a prank gone wrong. It was an emotional detonation, a reminder of how vulnerable even the strongest personas can be in a world where truth is optional and sensationalism sells. The media eventually caught up. Fact-checking articles began circulating, confirming Hogan was alive. Some outlets issued quiet corrections. Others never addressed their role in amplifying the hoax. But the damage was already done. And for Linda, so was the reflection. In a candid conversation the following week, she opened up even more. I realized something, she said, glancing down at her hands. When you think someone's gone, you don't remember the fights. You don't think about the lawyers or the betrayal. You remember the good stuff. You remember birthdays. Laughter. Kids running around the house. You remember the sound of his laugh when something genuinely cracked him up. And in that moment, when I thought he was gone, I remembered everything. She admitted she hadn't talked to Terry in months before the hoax. Their communication had waned over the years. Birthdays. Big events. Occasional updates about their children. But nothing more. And yet, in the moment she thought he was gone, it wasn't distance she felt, it was love. Not romantic love, but something older, deeper. The kind of bond that comes from surviving chaos together. It made her wonder how many other people were out there, grieving someone they hadn't spoken to in years because of a misunderstanding, a rift, or pride. The hoax had exposed more than the dangers of misinformation. It had exposed the fragility of human connection. Sometimes, she said, we need a scare to remind us what still matters. Who still matters? Meanwhile, Terry, Hulk Hogan, remained relatively silent about the emotional effect the hoax had on him. Publicly, he played it cool. Privately, however, friends noted a change. He reached out to people he hadn't spoken to in a long time. He spent more time with his children. He cancelled a few appearances. Not out of fear, but out of perspective. It was as if, having stared down the digital version of his own eulogy, he'd suddenly become aware of how little time there really was. According to one close friend, Hogan even called Linda again. Not to argue. Not to reminisce. Just to talk. It wasn't long or dramatic. But it was honest. He thanked me, Linda said, a small smile curling at the edge of her lips. He said, I don't know why, but it meant something to me that you were the first one to call. And I told him the truth. That no matter what, I'll always care. I may not wear the last name anymore, but he'll always be a part of my story. The hoax did something unexpected. It created a moment of healing. Not reconciliation in the Hollywood sense, but emotional clarity. For Linda Hogan, it reminded her that closure doesn't always come with finality. Sometimes, it comes with a phone call. A breath. A second chance to say what you didn't know you needed to. In the weeks that followed, Linda used her platform to advocate against the rising tide of celebrity death hoaxes and misinformation. This isn't just about me or Terry, she said in a live video that quickly went viral. This is about accountability. About empathy. About remembering that behind every famous name is a family. And a phone call like that? It breaks you. She paused and then added, so the next time you see something shocking online, take a moment. Ask if it's real. Ask if it's kind. Ask if it's necessary. Because one day, you might be on the other side of that headline, and you won't know it's fake until it's too late. The message resonated. Fans flooded the comments with support. Some shared their own stories of believing fake news about celebrities. Others admitted they had shared the Hogan hoax without checking its source. Many apologized, and Linda? She forgave them. I don't blame the fans, she said. I blame the machine. The algorithms. The people who push shock for profit. But I also believe we can do better. We have to. Because life is too short to spend it mourning ghosts that aren't gone. As the dust settled and the hashtags faded, what remained was something oddly beautiful, a reminder that even in an era of viral lies, truth still matters. That grief, even when misplaced, can open doors long thought shut. That sometimes, love is loud. And sometimes, it shows up in the quiet click of a phone call at midnight, carrying a voice you thought you'd never hear again. Linda Hogan was blindsided by a lie. But in the aftermath, she uncovered a truth she hadn't expected, and that truth was healing. What happened next wasn't scripted. It wasn't part of some PR campaign or a bid to reclaim a storyline. It was life, raw and unfiltered, unfolding beneath the shadow of a rumor that had nearly rewritten reality. In the days following her public response, Linda Hogan found herself inundated with messages. Some were supportive. Others, cruel, dismissive, even accusatory. The internet, after all, is rarely a one-note audience. But one message in particular stayed with her. It came from an older woman, a lifelong wrestling fan, who had also lost her husband years prior. I know what it's like to mourn someone while they're still alive, the woman wrote. And I know what it means to love someone from afar, long after the goodbye. Linda read that message 3 times and then she cried because the truth was, the death hoax hadn't just resurrected emotions, it had opened a door she hadn't realized was still there. There were things she had never said to Terry. Not in the divorce papers, not in the interviews, not even during their brief attempts at post-marriage friendship. Regret is a powerful thing. And so is time. When you believe someone has died, every unspoken word becomes a weight you never thought you'd carry. Maybe I needed that moment, Linda confessed in another interview. Not because I wanted it. God knows I didn't. But because it shook something loose in me. I had buried a lot. Anger. Hurt. Even love. And when I thought he was gone, I realized I hadn't let any of it go. Not really. So she made a decision. She wrote him a letter. It wasn't long. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. She told him how the rumor had hit her, how scared she'd been, how angry. She told him she was sorry, for the way things ended, for the things they never talked about. And then, most importantly, she told him thank you. Thank you for the memories. The life. The ride. The good and the bad. She didn't expect a response. But she sent it anyway. Terry, as it turns out, did respond. Not with a letter of his own, but with something that meant more, a phone call with no agenda. No tension. Just two people who had once shared a life, now sharing a moment that belonged to no one else. They laughed. They reminisced. They didn't try to fix the past. They simply honored it. And maybe that's what the world so often forgets. That healing doesn't always come with headlines or hugs. Sometimes, it's just the sound of a familiar voice on the other end of the line, reminding you that not everything is gone. Not yet. As the noise of the hoax faded into the background, Linda found herself reflecting more deeply on the way stories shape our reality. People say wrestling is fake, she mused. But you know what's faker? The way the internet decides what's real. One tweet, and it's gospel. One video, and it's a legacy rewritten. But the truth takes time. The truth takes courage. She paused. And sometimes, it takes heartbreak. To many, Linda Hogan had been a footnote in the Hulk Hogan saga. The ex-wife. The reality show co-star. The public feud partner. But in the quiet aftermath of a global lie, she became something more, a voice of truth in a world increasingly built on illusion. She used that voice to speak out. Not just about death hoaxes, but about the emotional cost of public life. She started doing interviews not to defend herself, but to illuminate the unseen toll of fame. The anxiety of picking up your phone and wondering if today's lie will be tomorrow's obituary. The pain of watching strangers decide how you should feel about someone you once loved. In one particularly raw moment, she described watching fans post rest in peace tributes with old footage of Hogan's matches. I saw a video, she said. It was him slamming Andre the Giant. Classic moment. The crowd was going wild. But the music they'd added, it was sad, like a funeral. And I couldn't breathe. That's the moment I thought, this might be real. She shook her head. I'll never forget that feeling. But what she also didn't forget, what she clung to, was the flood of relief that came when she heard his voice. The sound of life, interrupting grief. The reminder that not all endings are endings. The experience had also forced her to revisit the meaning of legacy. Hulk Hogan, the icon, had been nearly eulogized overnight. But Terry Bollea, the man, was still here. Still breathing. Still living with the weight of everything he'd built, broken, and rebuilt again. Maybe this was a test, Linda said. A strange, painful test. To see how the world would remember him. To see how we, his family, his fans, would react. And what I saw was that love never really goes away. It just gets buried sometimes, under pride, under headlines, under time. She looked up, her eyes shining. But when it matters, it comes back. Now, weeks later, the viral storm has passed. The hashtags have vanished. The tributes have stopped. Hulk Hogan is back to posting gym selfies and motivational messages. Life, as it does, has moved on, but something has shifted. Linda doesn't check her phone with the same anxiety anymore. She's made peace with the fact that the digital world will always be unpredictable. But what she hasn't made peace with, and maybe never will, is how close she came to losing something she didn't know she still cared about, and maybe that's the final gift of the hoax. Not the lie itself, but the truth it uncovered, that somewhere, beyond the wrestling rings and the tabloid covers and the decades of noise, there's still a man named Terry. And a woman named Linda. And a story that, even after all this time, isn't quite finished. What unfolded after the hoax wasn't publicized. There were no press releases, no staged family reunions, no sudden reconciliation photo ops. But for Linda, something much quieter, and far more significant, was beginning to unfold behind the scenes. It was something that didn't need an audience. It didn't require a headline. It was personal. It was real. She began to revisit memories she hadn't dared touch in years. Old photo albums stored in the attic. VHS tapes of birthday parties, now digitized and faded. Vacations in the Florida Keys. Family barbecues. The early days of Hogan Knows Best, when their kids were still young and the cameras, for a brief time, captured something that felt like a real family. I used to avoid looking back, Linda said. Because when things fall apart, you think the memories fall apart too. But they don't. They're still there, untouched. Waiting for you to be strong enough to face them. The experience had, unexpectedly, become a mirror. One she didn't want, but one she couldn't ignore. The death hoax made me think not just about Terry's life, but about my own. About how much we bury to keep going. About how much love we pretend doesn't exist just because it hurts too much to remember. So she made changes. Small at first. She reached out to her children more often. She started journaling again. Reconnected with a few mutual friends she and Hogan had once shared but had drifted away from after the divorce. Not because she was trying to rewind the past, but because she didn't want to live in its shadow anymore. In an interview filmed just 2 months after the hoax, Linda appeared different. Lighter. Clearer. You know, she said, for a long time, I thought of myself as a chapter in Terry's story. The angry one. The ex. But I've realized I was more than that. We were a team once. We built something. And even if it ended badly, it mattered. I mattered. He mattered. We mattered. She smiled. And maybe we still do. Just, in a different way now. Her honesty was rare in a media landscape built on spectacle. While many ex-celebrity couples exploit their past for attention, Linda had done the opposite. She'd used the pain of a lie to reconnect with a truth most people spend their whole lives trying to outrun, that closure doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from forgiving. When asked what she would say to Terry if the end really had come that night, Linda paused for a long moment. The room was silent, the air thick with unsaid things. I would have said, "Thank you," she whispered. For the chaos. For the joy. For the lessons. For the kids. For loving me, even when it was messy. And for letting me love you, even after it was over. She wiped her eyes. And then I would have told him I was sorry. Not for leaving. But for holding on to the anger for so long. It weighed me down. It made me forget the good parts. And those mattered, too. Her voice cracked. They mattered more than I ever let myself admit. Meanwhile, the world moved on, as it always does. New headlines. New controversies. New rumors. But for Linda Hogan, time had slowed in a way she never expected. And in that stillness, she found something she'd forgotten how to hold, peace. As the false death headlines faded from memory, as tribute videos were taken down or updated with "he's actually alive" disclaimers, one thing remained untouched, the emotion it had stirred. The reminder that life is fleeting. That love, once given, never truly disappears. That grief doesn't need death to exist. Linda wasn't the only one affected. Friends of Hogan reached out to him with real concern, even those he hadn't spoken to in decades. Some offered apologies. Others shared their own reflections. And in that unexpected ripple effect, something rare began to happen. People started having conversations they'd avoided for years. Hogan himself, usually bombastic and brash in interviews, grew quieter during this period. More introspective. When asked about the hoax in a rare sit-down, he smirked and said, "Brother, they've tried to write my ending before. But I ain't done yet." But then, in a softer moment, he added, "It made me think though. About what I leave behind. About who I've been. And about the people who still care, even when I thought they didn't. When the interviewer asked if he'd spoken to Linda since the incident, Hogan nodded slowly. Yeah. We talked. And, it was good. I think we both needed that. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to because the truth is, not all love stories end in marriage. Some end in understanding. Some transform into something gentler, more respectful, something that doesn't need labels, just honesty. And for